year, the Moscow government plans to remove from central city of Moscow all the trolleybuses, and some people in the Moscow government say that they are planning to remove all trolleybuses by 2020 and replace it by diesel buses. What do you think about this idea? Is it good or bad? Yeah.
I think this is quite surprising. This is was not done so abruptly even in the worst times when they were closing many tramways and trolleybuses. But now the attitude towards those modes has changed. It is very positive, and it's strongly emphasized by environmental requirements and livability of cities. So it's quite non-typical for this time, and I don't see any rationale behind it.
They bring different arguments for this decision. So I will read a couple of them and would like to hear your reaction for that. First, Mr. Liksutov, head of Department of Transportation, say, I will quote in Russian and then try to translate. Одна из основных причин замены троллейбусов на автобусы является крайне изношенная контактная сеть и устарелые спецчасти, что приводит к огромным потерям электроэнергии, электроподстанций недостаточно. Затраты на обновление контактной сети, строительство новых подстанций требуют значительных затрат. So the vice mayor says that the network is very old, and especially certain parts of the network, switches and stuff, are very old, and this is very expensive to renovate it. So it is much cheaper and faster to switch to buses. What do you think about this?
Well, first of all, I have heard information from people familiar with the Moscow system that do not confirm with that set is in very bad condition. So I don't think that is very correct. And what I saw in the streets was not major problems, that there are stoppages of traffic and so on. Second, the main question is not what should be done now at this moment. The question is which mode of transportation is superior for the future. And if say trolleybuses are superior for the future, then that justifies maintaining and investing in that. But just because they are old is not sufficient reason to say we will change the mode of transportation.
They also sometimes say that diesel buses is the future. This is this is more modern, and trolleybuses this is old style, some Soviet stuff that only we have and nobody else in the world have. So we need to go forward to more modern diesel buses. That's what they say. What do you think about it?
Well, diesel buses are getting improved, but on the other hand, there is a strong movement to not use diesel buses at all in the future, but to go for various hybrids or various forms of all-electric buses. The statement is not correct.
So diesel buses is not the future, and it's not more modern than trolleybus.
A number of cities have made a decision that they will not buy any diesel buses after 2015, 2020, 2025, including Paris and Brussels and Oslo and so on. So certainly the basic diesel buses are not a thing of the future, no.
Evgeny Mikhailov, head of Moscow Trans, saying that trolleybuses, engine and trolleybus generally, is much more sophisticated and difficult to repair than a bus, and they need 10 times more people to repair, to do maintenance for trolleybus than for a diesel bus, because the engine and the construction is more sophisticated. What do you think about this?
My experience over several decades is that trolleybuses, electric vehicles, are much simpler to maintain than diesels. And you can go to any bus shop and you will see huge difference if it's electric or if it is diesel. In railways we had steam engines and that was very dirty. Then came diesels, it was much cleaner. Electric is totally much cleaner than diesel locomotives.
Yeah,
and the same is with bus and trolleybus.
This is about maintenance. Maintenance, difficulty to repair it in case of sophistication of...
Well, the fact is the trolleybus lasts 50% longer time than the bus. And the fact is that the bus of 10 or 12 years is getting to be aging, shaky, not attractive, and so on. Trolleybus can go much longer. Electric traction lasts much longer than diesel engines. There is no discussion about it. That's a fact.
If we compare, for example, the engine, diesel engine and electric engine, is really electric engine is more sophisticated technically than diesel engine?
It is, yes, it is more sophisticated, but that doesn't mean it is. It takes a lot more labor. It depends on how many. When do you have to go for general overhaul? When you dismantle engine and so on. And certainly overhaul of diesel engines is not neither simple nor clean. It's very complicated, and the whole vehicle has to be maintained more because the vibrations of diesel engines are much greater. The weight of diesel engines is much greater, and so on.
Another very important argument, because we perceive trolleybuses and electric transport as clean, something cleaner and environmental friendly. But Михаил Блинкин, директор Института экономики транспорта и транспортной инфраструктуры Высшей школы экономики, you know him, claims the opposite. He says that the trolleybus is environmentally dangerous way of transportation. It is riding, so it's very slow, and other cars need
slow.
Slow, and other cars need to stop and go around it, and this leads to more pollution than it would be in a bus. That's what Mr. Blinken said. What do you think is really is it possible to make such a claim that trolleybus is less environmental friendly than bus?
Among many books about traction of vehicles, you can have a look at one of my books where I clearly say that electric traction is superior because it creates much faster acceleration. It is not slower than a bus at all. To say yes, if it goes through switches, sometimes it has to slow down. That is true. But pure motor performance is much superior to the engine. And then each engine is used also for braking the vehicle, which diesel does with considerable noise and vibration. Braking of electric vehicles used to generate electricity and heat the vehicle. But now the modern vehicles have so-called chopper control of electronic control of motors, and therefore can generate and return the power into the network, so that electric vehicles, be they metro vehicles or tramway or trolleybus, their power consumption has been significantly reduced, somewhere 20, 30, 40% reduced in recent years. Plus, buses very often, first of all, their engines are running continuously. So during the stops when passengers are boarding, the engine is running. Then even at terminals, it's a big problem sometimes. Neighbors complain that these engines of buses which are waiting for 3 or 5 or 10 minutes are continuously noisy and producing pollution. electric motor is switched off and it does not produce anything. Even if it moves or not, it does not produce any pollution at the place where trolleybus is.
So what do you think about this argument that trolleybus is less environmental friendly than a bus?
No, that's opposite to the facts.
Absolutely. And the theory that Mr. Blinken brought, that this is less environmental friendly because of other cars, I asked him to provide some proof or anything. Did you heard about any claims like this before, any theory like this? Can it have a basis? I don't know.
That what? Trolleybus impedes more other traffic?
Yes, this is what he said.
That is, I don't know what he means by that, because that has never been a problem anywhere. That has never been. I've analyzed, for example, in Athens, Greece, where they have trolleybuses where they pass each other in the station, and the wire allows them to overtake each other. And in Philadelphia, we have local line and express line. You have here very complicated intersections and so on. And trolleybus is easier to accelerate and decelerate. And take, for example, any steep street, and I've observed them on some streets. The diesel bus can, with great noise and smoke, climb up maybe 10–15%, very extremes. Trolleybus can come and quietly accelerate as much as the wheels take it without spinning. So demonstration of that acceleration is very drastic in hilly cities, and I've observed that many times.
Okay. Another thing that I heard from Blinken, that trolleybus is a system that will anyway go away in the next 5–10 years, because electric technologies that is possible to use without the wire will come. So trolleybus will anyway will lose it, so we should not care by losing it a little bit before. What do you think about this?
It is true that there is a lot of development of different types of buses, trolleybuses and hybrid buses and so on. That is true. It is true, however, that an electric bus that would have the same performance and the same radius for every charging of the batteries, that was expected within 5 years for the last about 40 years. That was always expected. Progress has been made, but there are no models which can fully have such full performance. But his statement that in 5 years we may not be using, or that may be replaced by something else, may have a point, but the way would not be to abandon trolleybuses, it would be opposite. Let's keep trolleybuses, and they can, the network you give is an excellent asset that you can gradually increase the line lengths where trolley contact is not necessary, that we can provide more and more charging stations, which are somewhat expensive. Now you have the whole network, you can easily provide those stations. So that transition to that kind of electric bus is certainly, it will be much easier if it happens, if you have a trolleybus system than if you don't. But you would not go now back to diesel and then from diesel to something third. It's the wrong way.
Also, Blinken also says that trolleybus is something old. This is something from the Soviet Union, because 70% of all the trolleybus system in the world now in former Soviet Union republics. So this is something old and Soviet and not something modern, and we should not worry about it.
Well, what does that mean, modern? I don't know what's the meaning of that, but that argument was used for tramways when they were replaced from many cities. And it was a recognized mistake, because now tramways are also being built in over 100 cities in the last 20, 30 years. New tramways were built at a much higher cost, but because of their excellent performance, and they have an impact, positive impact on cities rather than negative. So, and not as drastic, but similar things has happened with trolleybuses, that they were replaced in many places, but now the cities that have them have upgraded them very recently.
Another thing, director of Mosgortrans, Evgeny Mikhailov, saying that there is no good manufacturer of trolleybuses, so it is no possible to buy good trolleybus. So we need to get rid of it because bus is easy to buy.
Well, if the fact what vehicles are on the market should not affect the choice of the vehicle, because you are not buying vehicle for present only, you are buying it for a decade or 2 or 3 later. And really, if you didn't have a factory that produces good metro cars, would you consider closing Moscow Metro? I mean, that's a different thing, and it really, it's not true that there are no modern trolleybuses. I can give you, dozens of cities where you can go, and go to Switzerland. If anything is up to date, is Switzerland. Find them there.
Even in Russia, we still have these huge factories that we used to build ZIL.
Yes, yes. And in Belgrade, in Serbia, there was a time when trolleybus network was fairly extensive. And then came this, let's simplify and let's have only 2 modes of transportation and so on. And they closed some of the lines. Mm-hmm. And then came the environmental element and favoring transit element and so on. And now they have rebuilt and re-expanded trolleybus and bought very modern trolleybuses from Belarus, which really are running on the center city lines very quietly and very popular.
Mm-hmm. Another thing that claims director of Mosgortrans, Evgeny Mikhailov, the trolleybus is not flexible, they don't have enough maneuver, so he cannot pass around a probka or a parked cars. So this leads to its immobility of this mode of transportation. So we should switch to buses that can easily go.
Buses have been adopted in many cities because of their flexibility. And the experience is that we do not want flexibility in order to mix buses with cars. That's the downfall of buses. So every bus lines, of course, when they operate on lightly traveled routes, bus is optimal, absolutely. And diesel bus is optimal. But if you have a heavily traveled line, then you don't want it mixed with other traffic. And going from tramways separated from traffic to buses in mixed traffic has been a disaster and huge loss of passengers. And cities which have progressed, which wanted to favor public transportation, have gone for light rail, and now the whole movement of BRT is based on copying non-flexibility of rail systems.
If you can describe in a couple of words what it would be if they would change the trolleybus to a bus.
Well, you would decrease the image that Moscow has, and many people like trolleybuses in Russia, not only those who live in Russia, but also who visit Russia. It's a symbol of the city. There would be some loss of passengers, which always happens if you go from trolleybus to bus. People prefer to know where the lines are going. You would, in some intersections, it may be easier to route them around and so on. But in others, if you would eliminate trolleybuses, you would have more difficulty separating public transport from cars, more difficulty. And finally, you would end up with much more noise and exhaust. There's still a fact. I keep listening in the last 20 years, are these buses getting quieter? And there are some quiet buses, but average bus is still not quiet. And it is running even at stops and even at terminals at all times.
So it's a major step backwards.
Major step backwards with respect to noise, with respect to exhaust, and with respect to environment. It's the cities that are really have decided not to buy more buses compute that they will decrease, say, 20% of CO2 and various gases that are produced.
So it looks like Moscow going against the world trend.
Well, if so many cities have officially decided not to buy diesel buses anymore, and with expectation of some going toward electric, absolutely, then if you have already electric, and modern trolleybuses are not only with power, they all have capability to go certain distances, and that distances will be increasing, I expect, as the technology improves, that such trolleybuses will be logical step toward that solution, while going now to diesels when other cities are not doing, which means we would go to where those cities were 10 or 20 years ago and have no infrastructure that is now existing on trolleybus network.
So, will it be a good idea to replace trolleybuses in center city Moscow for buses?
I don't think it would be, because I see no serious problems with the trolleybuses. I see there are many advantages over buses, and I see that the trend is going not from electric to diesel, but from diesel to electric, and electric into redesigned and further improved electric, which can operate with wires or without wires and be charged easily.